Well, good evening and welcome to About the Valley. And my guest tonight is Peter Decaro
Hi,
of
Harry.
Re-
Resonate.
Resonate. I get these senior moments all the time. Maybe I am being affected by COVID.
Hey, maybe you need some more cannabis. I'll help you with that.
Right. And you started out as a medical cannabis sale, but now you're doing both medical and, here we go again,
Adult use.
adult use. Yeah. Recreational.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're unique too because you not only retail it, you grow it.
Yes.
And you have your facility in Douglas.
We do. We do. I'll tell you, Harry, it's been a journey. Like what an experience.
Well, I mean, yes, but it's not something that it wasn't like opening a liquor store when you out and get a license. I mean, you go through a lot of checking, and they require a lot of things. Security alone is unbelievable what they require.
It's unbelievable. We when we started this thing, I remember 2015.
Yeah, that's when it passed, right?
So 2012 is when it passed.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
9 years now.
9 years, and that was on the medical side.
Yeah.
So 2000, it was a couple of years later, 15, I believe is when they passed the recreational use. But I remember looking at that, the whole program, and going into the regulations and reading about it and thinking, okay, like it's about time that this came about. And I felt really good about our ability to build a company that could produce the quality of cannabis that we've seen grown all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that in Massachusetts we had great people. The regulations are difficult. The compliance aspect of it is difficult. But if you can follow it and you're committed to it and you understand the plant and how to cultivate it effectively and you've built the right facility to do it, that was my whole philosophy. If we can do that in the Massachusetts environment that we live in, then we're going to be successful. But more so, we're going to deliver the quality that the patients and the consumers here, need. Coming from Massachusetts, I feel like we all have this little bit of a chip on our shoulder. We feel we could do it as well as anybody, in the country. Especially me. I think that we have some of the best and brightest here.
Yes.
So we didn't open this thing because it was, well, let's run out into cannabis. It's a great thing. This is really cool. It was, we're going to build a strong discipline around this. And we built this state-of-the-art facility out in Douglas.
I know.
It really is. Like, I tell people now, like, we built a spaceship. It's the only way that I can put it. Like, so we know we're going to get to Mars. We're going to get to the moon, right? Because we built it correctly. And I feel, to a certain extent at this stage in the game, a little bit blessed, a little bit, appreciative of the fact that we had a goal and we set out to achieve it and we did it. It doesn't mean that we're where we want to be. We've been cultivating product now for less than a year. We started cultivating February 6th of 2020, right before the pandemic. But we've been harvesting since late May of 2020.
Oh, okay.
So we're still there.
So about a year.
About a year, but we've made it through since, counting June, right? So we're 7, 8, 9 months into this, and we were happy to see that we were recognized by BDS Analytics as we're top 10 in the state for flower, top 3 for pre-rolls. So we're trending in the right direction. We have more to do, but man, what a journey it's been.
A lot of people felt that is this a good idea? It's illegal. Well, there's a big difference here. When you actually it's a service you're doing to people who want to use cannabis. They're going to use it either way. If it was illegal, they're going to get it. It happens in other states. The thing is, yours is you're getting the right product. You're getting a pure product. You're not getting something that you don't know where it was grown or what was added to it or anything like that. And it's the same as I can get prescription drugs on the black market too. But what am I getting?
When you see what we put into, so you're talking about we use basically all organic material.
Right.
We are held to a standard above and beyond what you see in the food and drug industries. We can't use certain nutrients, certain types of nutrients. We don't use pesticides at all. It's
Right.
funny, because I've had people, they ask me like, "Oh, you use this? You know what we use? Pests. We use bugs. We use natural, essential oils and minerals, things of that nature." But it is basically the most organic, product that you can purchase.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you an interesting story. So we opened the week of the pandemic, March 24th.
Oh, my.
Governor Baker comes out,
Oh.
issues a shelter-in-place order the day we go to open, right? Like we didn't already have enough to do. But anyway, as part of the mandate, it was we need to do home delivery. So I thought, okay, let's get this rolled out. So within a week or 2 weeks, we were approved by the Cannabis Control Commission to do our home deliveries, and we started. And when people think about cannabis and just overall as an industry and the stigma, I'll tell you, for me, I said to my team when we start the deliveries, I'm gonna kick off this in the first couple days. I'm gonna handle the deliveries. So I went out and I drove the van and I delivered to patients that had medical cards. Now, most people would probably assume, because of cannabis, that I would show up at houses where they're partying, they're 21, and younger, and they're trying to. When I tell you, like, those couple of days, I met with patients every single time. I talked about how to use RSO for those that were going through cancer treatment. We talked about how to use CBD for those going through chemo and radiation, and how to reduce the risk of neuropathy. Like, we talked about, I was personally taken back because those couple of days, man, like I remember going home and being like, this was one of the most rewarding things personally that I could do, to know that I'm making a home delivery to somebody that is so in need of this product.
Right.
And that's the part that a lot of the general population doesn't see. You know,
Right.
so.
I mean, these cancer patients were using it before it was legal. And they were getting it on the street.
Yeah.
And here again, did they know what they were getting? Well, of course not. It's whatever that dealer brought them. In your case, they know they're getting a pure product, totally organic, nothing added to it, exactly what you need, and it's a big help. I mean, I talked to cancer patients who said that it was a godsend, especially
Yeah.
after the chemo.
I mean, the stories that I could tell you. I had one patient just started chemo, wasn't eating, 2 weeks, affected the heart. They needed to get her to eat, to rebuild her immune system and get her strength
Right.
back. Never took cannabis. We had this all natural fruit chew, no artificial flavors, no artificial preservatives, purely natural infused with cannabis. And the doctors, we spoke to the family and we said, well, speak to your oncologist and make sure that they're okay with us while she's in the hospital offering this. This is the makeup, this is the formulation, etc. And the oncologists were like, we're okay with it. Go ahead. We're willing to try anything. Ate the gummies, sparked the appetite, rebuilt her strength, went home. Now, at the end of the day, it's not always cannabis isn't going to be the cure to cancer. But what we're seeing in terms of the medical research, there's a particular drug right now that's going through clinical trials here in Boston, and there's a flavonoid as a part of the cannabis plant that they have found has had a higher degree of success preventing cancer metastasis in pancreatic cancer patients.
Oh, wow.
Now you're talking about something that is a very dire diagnosis, right?
Well, it's almost fatal. Very few people make it through pancreatic cancer.
So it goes to show you that there are aspects of the plant that we don't know enough about. We've already seen a drug like Epidiolex, which what came out, I believe, over in the UK, and that drug is being used to treat children that have epileptic seizures. So, I mean, I could go on and rattle off a number of statistics and research to you, but the bottom line is we're onto something. And what's really good about it is that people are going to criticize the state of Massachusetts and how that they've regulated this industry. In my opinion, as operators, we all have a corporate responsibility
Yes.
to do the right thing by our consumers and patients and to lead the industry in the right direction, right? Many people may not share that sentiment. It may be more about let's get into the market, let's figure out ways to sell it. It shouldn't be about all of those that come from affluent backgrounds. And I don't disagree with any of those opinions, okay? Like, I believe that we need to have diversity. It's a positive way of doing things. I agree with that. But what I'm saying is that it's really easy to critique the regulatory environment. Our position is we need to figure out the ways to operate within the rules to achieve the best quality products that we can for the market, for patients and consumers. We need to do that, and we need to demonstrate to all the consumers, or all of those, the residents, particularly here in the Commonwealth, that we're not just out here pushing a drug. We're out here delivering something that's adding real value and wellness to the
Yes.
community. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you've gone from the medical to also the recreational,
Okay.
but what's wrong with recreational? If you feel like that relaxes you at home, it's actually making you feel better.
So it's funny that you should say that. We rolled out our Northampton store, which is adult use. So
Right.
small plug, we're located at 110 Pleasant Street, Northampton. But we rolled it out, and I did an interview out there with the chamber, and I said, you know, very happy to be here to serve the consumers and the patients of Northampton and the surrounding communities. And somebody made a comment on the video that to the tune of, does he realize that his store is only adult use? And the funny thing about that is, to me, everyone's a patient. You know, you can be an adult use or a recreational consumer and be doing it to treat something that maybe you don't need to publish, want to publish. Maybe it's stress relief, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's
Right.
insomnia. Just because you're on one side doesn't mean that, just because you're a recreational consumer doesn't mean you're not trying to treat something or improve your life in some way. And yes, obviously, you know, people use it recreationally. Totally get that. Use it for, you know, what you want. But a lot of people are using it for other reasons. So to me, we're all patients of some kind.
Right.
Even if that desire is a mood lift.
Right, I mean, it's no different than someone getting out home and having a glass of wine or a couple of beers to make them feel better.
But
Same-
you know,
same concept.
But you're talking now about no calories, right?
Right.
The damage that, you know, the alcohol, you know, and for the record, I enjoy my wine and scotch and beer. So like I'm not at all degrading the
Right,
spirit
right.
industry. So I do like it, and I believe there's always a place. But this is a healthier alternative.
Yes.
And I think for those that are a lot more health conscious, those that need to stay away from alcohol, I think cannabis provides a lot of the relief that they need, or the relief that they want to kind of, again, get to that level. And I've noticed that even for myself. I mean, you know, when I consume it, it's, you know, if I can't sleep at night, that's going to put me to sleep. If I'm dealing with a sports-related injury, neck issues, back issues, like, you know, I'm going to use a THC and a CBD blended product of some kind to help me get through that and to get back. And I have a lot of personal wins with the plant, from cancer recovery to disc and neck degeneration, and I'm pretty public about these things. Like, I've tested it. I've had to prove it to myself at various times. You never know when one of these ailments pop up, right? When you throw the
Right.
back out, or you throw a shoulder out, or you do one of these things. So when you do that, the first impulse is people call the doctor and they get put on a Tylenol, an ibuprofen, a Vicodin, a Percocet.
Oh, yeah, you get into the real heavy-duty drugs. And to me, those are the gateway drugs.
You know, Nancy Reagan's not walking through that door, right? I agree with you 100%.
Right.
That is the world we live in today. In my opinion, that's led to the opiate epidemic. And to take cannabis and to use it, you know, you have to tell patients, they gotta be patient. You need to. This is a process. If this is going to work for you, it's not going to be a situation like you take a Tylenol and you feel no pain. No, this is going to be a little bit of a process to get something that your body responds to. But once you get there, it's providing the necessary relief. And we've treated people that have come in with shoulder surgeries and, again, back pain, neck pain, you name it, Parkinson's, fibromyalgia. I mean, that to me is a pretty rewarding part of the job. And it's one of the things that is really motivating for us to give back to the community.
Yeah, you're mentioning diseases like Parkinson and fibromyalgia.
Myalgia, yeah.
Those are not curable.
No.
I mean, you got it forever. You got it until you're deceased.
Yep.
So you need something to help you control it. And with epilepsy, you need some people do get over it when they get older, but not everybody, and you need something to help you control it.
It really is it's a new world for people that are willing, and I'd say that's the number one challenge with most people, is that people aren't patient when it comes to using cannabis to achieve what they're trying to achieve. Because we're all conditioned mentally to trust the opiate. The immediate relief and satisfaction we get, it's inherent in every American, right? We want instant relief. Get out of my way, I'm driving down the road. You know, you want your meals, you want it's just how we are. And cannabis requires a little bit more time. But I think that if for me, especially as a cancer survivor, when you look at just the idea that even if there's a small chance, and we were seeing it, the research supports it, but even if there's a small chance that it prevents cancer metastasis, why wouldn't you take it?
Well, here again now, why doesn't the medical insurance industry allow you, to obtain it through your insurance?
The federal legality still,
I know, because of the
issue.
federal. I agree. If the state doesn't want to legalize it, that's the state's choice, and let them keep it. But the federal government should say, okay, if the state wants to do it, we have no problem with it, and we have no problem with the insurance companies covering it, because you're doing more justice to your patient, probably to your client, than you're putting them on opioid.
I think we're getting there. I mean, the Biden administration, Biden is kind of wavered slightly, but Congress has been supportive of it. And it's really what I think a lot of people need to understand, is that this is what is most likely going to happen, or should happen, in a series of steps. First of all, the decriminalization piece is necessary. It's critical. I mean, and for those that are serving extremely long sentences for marijuana use and distribution, at this point, we need to make that right. Right? We need to make that right. Number two, you get into the federal, again, legalization of it, and now we are talking about the grants, the research, and the things that we need to do to advance the science of the plant. Those things are critical. But then you're getting into also interstate commerce and ultimately international commerce, and the definition behind all of those things and how they work in a federally legal space is really the journey that we're going to go down in the cannabis industry. So there's aspects of it that are positive, eliminating some of the tax, the federal tax requirements and the 280E tax provision that we have to deal with. It'll make it easier, and as an industry, we just need to make sure that we do it right. Right,
but here again, it'd be regulated.
Yeah.
Where now, if you're getting it illegally, there's no regulation on it. There's no taxes collected. There's nothing.
The black market, to their credit, brought us here. And without those growers at home that took the risks over the years, and many of those that were incarcerated, you could argue that we wouldn't be here, right? So to that, I applaud it. However, now on the other side, what I'll tell you, and where I agree with your sentiment, is I take my responsibility extremely seriously. And as I tell my team, we're not here to be average. We're here to lead a newly emerging industry. Right. And we need to demonstrate that we can do it, as I said, as well as anyone under the rule structure that's been provided to us. We learn new things every day, like Scots. I use that as always a good example, right?
Yeah.
God, I remember as my 20s going out there as a young knucklehead, and I'm spraying weeds, and I'm working landscaping jobs while I'm going to college and doing things like that. fast forward 20 years later, and now you find out it's a cancer-causing agent. It's
Yeah.
carcinogenic. We're seeing things with talcum powder and things of that nature that are cancer.
That you use liberally without thinking anything about it.
So to me, and it's not to suggest that this is to everybody. There are people in the illegal market and the legal market that do it as well, if not better than many in the legal market. And there are people in the legal market that bend the rules.
Yeah.
So to me, I try not to think in terms of markets because without both we wouldn't be here. But what I do challenge everyone to do is to understand that we have this responsibility. We got to do it right. And if you're going to grow illegally, legally, whatever, the rules that were set forth by the Cannabis Control Commission in the state, yes, they're stringent, but they're for safety.
Oh, yeah.
So if those in the black market are following or at least making sure that what they're doing is correct and they're using the right, ingredients and they're using the right materials and, they're not using heavy pesticides and things of that nature, hey, you do you and you make your choices. But for any of those that don't, that's what concerns me.
Well, like I say, going it through an industry like yours,
Yep.
you're making sure that you get the right dosage. If you make a gummy, you're putting the right amount into it. It's not. If you go back in history before the FDA, druggists made their own medicines right there, and there was no regulation, so you could get one that was overdosing or whatever. Who knows? Because
Yeah.
there was nobody regulating anything, and that was a problem. When they started regulating, the problem went away, and here again, and I think you would see the black market industry dry up if you found that more states accepted and regulated, because there'd be no need for it.
Well, yeah, I there's the idea that it's like the same with alcohol, right? I mean, once upon a time, everybody made their own alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
Prohibition existed, so we're in Prohibition 2.0. Eventually, it gets to a point where pricing becomes an issue, and there are a lot of growers out there in black market, and they're growing and they're selling their products for whatever they're selling them for in the market, and there's no taxes and there's no government intervention there. So, yeah, in theory, their prices, but eventually, I think that with increased competition in the state, we're going to see prices continue to drop. Like,
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you this. Here's the funny thing, because I hear it all the time. I see it online, and I see people talk about, corporate greed and what, these large entities. Look, there's nothing I would love more than to make this thing affordable for everybody. But to your point, the regulatory environment and some of the things that we need to do to make sure this industry is successful, right?
Yes.
It comes at a cost. So we all, again, I always ask for people, let's be patient. Like, let's make the right decisions. Let's support the legal market, because that's what's going to guarantee that it's sustainable.
Right, and you are right about the cost. We have 3 proposed places here in Northbridge. I'm on the planning board. None of them have even moved forward with putting down the foundation. And I know what the big part of it is, the cost. And putting together that much money to be able to do that. You saw that, you did it, you put it together. You didn't do that on a shoestring budget.
That's well said.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. These projects are significant. But, and look, frankly, Harry, like when I talk about the journey, I mean, there was no roadmap to this.
That's the other thing. You really have. I know I found that firsthand on the planning board. We have to oversee it, and I'm trying to wonder which way we're going here. What's required? Fortunately, we have guidelines from the state.
Yeah.
But I saw it, I said, oh my God, these regulations. How you can move it if you have a grow station. We had a grow station that was going to be put in town. The security they had to go through. I mean, I think it's more. They have more security than the banks.
Yeah, yeah. It's true, and you touched upon an interesting point there when you said, you have some guidance. Well, when we started this, there was no guidance.
Yeah, nobody knew what to do.
I actually think that the industry caught a lot more speed as the CCC got better at what they were doing.
Right.
But no, it's hard to see the light through the trees when you're at that point. When you entered as early as I did, we were writing the rules. We were learning this as we went, and there were things that we probably lost out on. I mean, you know, zoning at various municipalities just was non-existent.
Right.
You know, when we were going through the application process. Now most towns in the Commonwealth are properly zoned, so you at least have some guidance as to, okay, if I fall in this and there's availability for a license, I have as good a chance as anybody to open. You have those parameters, but back when we were there were no parameters.
Well,
So
you had a situation where some of the towns would just vote you, not allow you at all.
and we still unfortunately have towns in the Commonwealth that you know, are a little off the grid in terms of understanding how this works, you know, because
Right.
the way I like to look at it is, you know, yeah, my life, everything I've invested, I've built over the years, it's in my company. I mean, I look at it like I'm here to try to create jobs and do good things in this community. And yes, like a lot of people supported that. They invested in the company, they invested their kids' future college tuition, and you know, that's my responsibility to make sure those kids end up going to college, right?
Right, yeah.
You know, and that's how I take this very seriously. That's how I look at it. You know, and also these operators, as they come to you, many of them are in the same situation, and the amount of risk that they're entering into, and the amount of steps that they need to go through, it's daunting, it's scary, and it's easy to reach out to the CCC and you know, and to criticize. And I hate to sound so pro-regulatory. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but again, looking at a newly emerging industry, it's we all have a responsibility to see it through. You know, that's why I'm appreciative that we're here today. We're having this talk, and that we're doing this the second time. The first time when I had metal studs up on the walls and nothing else, and this time when we're full scale in operation. And you know, I'm appreciative of that because I've seen the growth of the regulatory environment. I've seen the growth of the industry. Even though most people can criticize it, the good news is that we're on such a good trend. We are, this state, the residents here have embraced it. They've seen the benefits of it, and we're going in the right direction.
I think that goes to you people in the industry, because you showed that it's not a problem. That it didn't, you know, when it first started out, everybody pictured, well, maybe we'll have this place where all these kids are hanging out. No, that's not what happened.
No.
Everybody, kids are going to get access to it that shouldn't have it. I haven't seen that happen.
No.
So, I mean, you've really done a good job. And people, there's marijuana stores all over the place. And people don't even know they're there.
Most of them have improved properties that
Yes.
most likely weren't going to be occupied.
Right.
And these cultivation sites and production sites that are open, some may carry a fragrance and some may seem like a nuisance, but they're rehabbing old buildings. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're improving what would, you know, especially at a time in a pandemic. When you think about the amount of investment that came into Massachusetts to restore these properties and to create opportunities for employees to go to work, what would have happened if that industry wasn't here?
Yeah. Not to mention the revenues that you produce
Oh,
for the cities and towns and as well as the state.
when I drive down the roads and I see construction, I want to say you're welcome.
Yeah.
It's, you know, and it's true. There's still a lot more to do, but as an industry, yeah, it's you know, and I think you see that too in some of the things that we're doing now.
Well, people got a little nervous when they first started because you had very few outlets. So the ones that were there got inundated with traffic. But it was said, wait a minute, relax. As they open up, you're going to see this lessen out. And it has. And there's no traffic problems at any of these stores anymore.
No. I mean, we still get pushes, so you know, but we as operators understand how to manage that effectively.
Yeah.
So there are times when traffic can get a little bit heavy, but that hasn't been a negative impact. I think that most realize that any negative impacts that did occur are, for the most part, they've been resolved.
But, you know, the amount of regulations they put on you on how many people you can have in the store at the time, the amount of identification they have to give. I mean, it's easier to go into a liquor store and pick up a bottle, and a lot easier than to go in and buy one joint from your place.
There, you know, in the very beginning, fortunately, we built a very large store. So
Yeah,
I'm very proud of the fact that while COVID can impact any of us in any circumstance, right? I mean, it's so contagious. We had very few, I mean, less than what, you know, that I could count on one hand, infections with no major spreads in any facility that we operated. You know, the message that I like to tell people in the cannabis industry is that, you know, and I think that a lot of people understand this. Not every operator is the same.
right.
Again, black market, you know, regulated market, not every operator is the same. You know, and I think as an industry we're doing better, but consumers and patients, you know, need to seek out those operators that are committed to advancing this industry, to doing the right things within the industry, to making sure that they're rolling out the right products and services, because that's what's going to continue to sustain the industry. That's what's going to mitigate the risk. You know, and like for me, you know, you know, I'm a friendly competitor to all my competitors, but I'm a champion for the rules, because the last thing I want to see is go backwards from what
Right.
we've created.
Oh, yeah. You know, if you got someone in the industry breaking the rules to try and make it better for themselves, I mean, that hurts the whole industry.
It does. It does, and it hurts consumers and patients and those that
Yeah.
need access to the products that they
And
want.
that's true with any industry,
Yep,
any retail outlet.
agreed, agreed. Yeah, and you know, and that's why I say, like, with this journey that we've been on, uh, every day, every month, it's something new. Like, you know, the processes are getting refined. It's a relentless effort. You know, it's funny. Prior to this, I ran a manufacturing company, and you know, I used to say to my friends, like, I could do that in my sleep. I felt like, you know, I could golf on Fridays, and you know, like I had it dialed in, and then I entered this cannabis space, and now all of a sudden I went from 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You know, what did I do? But again, the rewards just outweigh the
Right.
sacrifice.
Yeah, and you know, you took a big chance because this was a virgin industry that no one really knew anything about. You were in there early.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember when we submitted the first application, and I laugh now because I showed up at the lawyer's office the last day of that particular phase that was open. And I went in and I spoke to a very reputable legal firm, and I said, okay, we need to set up a nonprofit because that was the way that it was regulated at the time.
Yes.
All the entities needed to be a nonprofit. I said, we need to set this up. This is what I need you to do. And they said, we don't have any idea how to set this up. There's no guidance. There's nothing. I said, set it up this way. This is what I want to see, and I'm going to drive this in. And we literally set it up that day. And, you know, I spend so much time researching the regulation and the legal platform and all of that, but I didn't, at that stage, it was like, well, is this really possible? Like, can this really happen? Or is this going to end up in court again, like we've seen other states and even Massachusetts? Is the process going to be flawed? Like, what am I into? So I went down and I submitted the application on that day. And 30 days later, I got a note saying, you're invited to go to phase 2. And I went, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. Now this thing's getting a little bit more involved. But we didn't move forward with designing and planning because we still didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was a big problem. I mean, the people who were writing the regulation didn't know what was going to
Right,
happen.
and I'm dealing with the Department of Public Health out of Boston at the time. So we get invited to the second one, which was the management and operations profile. And I said, okay, this is a little bit more involved. Fill it all out. And I think that it took maybe 6 months to get a response, which was, this all looks good. You've been invited to go to phase
That's
3.
like an eternity when you're trying to get a business going.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, I had no idea what was going to
Yeah,
happen.
you've already got a lot of money invested, and you don't know if you're going to even get your investment back.
Right. So now we get to phase 3, which is the siting profile, and we knew we had the cultivation site locked up, but under the regulation, you had to be vertically integrated. So you had to sell retail, you had to cultivate your own products. In other states, they don't allow that.
Right.
It's not allowed, which to me blows my mind because it should be just, you know, free markets, but whatever. It's regulated in other states. You know, so I said, we have to find a dispensary. And then we set our sights on Worcester. You know, being a Worcester guy, I said,
Yeah.
I want to be here in my community. I want to prove that we're going to bring one of the best cannabis companies. We're going to form it right here with Massachusetts people. That still to this day means so much to me to be able to say that. Probably more so than most consumers or patients care, but to me, I'm the guy you're going to see in the supermarket. So if I'm saying that it's going to be the best material, like I'm living and dying by that commitment. You know what I mean? But so we set it on Worcester, and we get through this process, and I remember how competitive it was, and we were the fourth out of the 4 companies that were selected to open for medical use, and then they shut it down. We didn't know adult use was coming. You know, well,
Yep.
obviously we knew it was coming, but we didn't know how it was going to be implemented, what it was going to mean, or any of that. And there was no zoning, again, at the time
Right.
that we did it. So we're in this the whole process, and we said, okay, well, now we're here. Let's do it. We get the permission, and now we get our provisional license. And we received our provisional license in November of 2017. And now I said, wow, so this is now effectively real. It's time for us to build it out. And I spent pretty much all of 17, I'm sorry, it was November of 16. I spent all of pretty much 17 going through all my designing and planning of the site. It took that long, and what a comprehensive team-based approach we had. You know, I remember this, and I thoroughly enjoyed this process, but we brought in growers. We didn't have one, we had like 3 or 4. We had engineers, we had subcontractors, we had experts in drug production, we had experts in auditing, drug auditing. We, you know, and myself being a manufacturing and operational, you know, professional and executive, we sat around a table and we built this design, and we said, okay, now everybody here, we had a greenhouse company, and we said, tear this thing apart. Tear it apart. Where are all the problems? And we went through this whole thing and mapped out this cultivation campus that, like I said, we built the spaceship.
I could see most people just walking away and say, forget it, it's just too much.
It taxed every shred of your perseverance to be able to get it. You know, I can say to you that I understand completely how some people can walk away from this after getting involved, and they see the magnitude of it, how competitive it's become.
I mean, you reach your frustration level and say, is this all worth it?
But at the end of the day, the driver to, well, number one, I couldn't stop. Just wasn't, we just couldn't do it. But my partners that I brought in were phenomenal. And you know, during the dark days of like, is this thing even going to be possible? Of all the challenges we dealt with, we persevered and we got there. And through that process of 2017, and touch upon something that you alluded to earlier, we ran into, at the end of that year, Attorney General Sessions rescinding the Cole memo, which
Yes.
allowed the federal government to now intervene with state operations, right, or state law. So we were ready to build. We designed the plant. We got our building permit set in. We had our GC selected. He rescinded the Cole memo, and we had alternative forms of funding lined up, funding against equipment, all this stuff lined up. And as soon as he rescinded that, all of our funding disappeared.
Yeah, because they got scared.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we went back, and you know, I went out and I said, well, we can't stop now. We've invested some money in this. We started the project, and I spent that year, beginning in about February of 2018, and by the following year, we raised all the capital for the project, and we were complete.
Yeah, and that's another problem that you had in the beginning was you couldn't take credit cards.
Oh no! I mean, we still can't take credit cards. Well,
Well,
so
wasn't there a system that was devised that you were able to take them now?
oh well, yeah. So we couldn't take. In the very beginning, it was cash only.
Right.
Then debit cards were were released shortly thereafter. The state mandated, state chartered banks were able to offer banking services.
Right, as long as they're state chartered.
State chartered, but none of the feds would. And
Right.
to make matters worse, back in those days, if you were banking with an FDIC, federally insured bank, or one of the national banks, and they learned that you were gaining money, whether it's income, revenue, what have you, anything, in the cannabis industry, they would call all your notes. They'd call your mortgages, they'd close your bank accounts.
Wow.
They'd send you a letter saying, no thanks, we don't want your business. So
Yeah.
when I onboarded people in the early days, we set up private accounts for all of our employees at a bank that would guarantee that if their mortgages got pulled, that they would be able to keep their homes.
Wow. I mean, the thing is, you do have banks that they don't use the FDIC, they use the state equivalent to FDIC. So they're covered, they don't have to worry. But yeah, you had the feds actually working against the state.
Yeah, that's part of one of the frustrations of it. I mean, and it rolls into the COVID relief. Like, we weren't eligible for any COVID relief.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah, because you're not recognized by the feds.
right. And you know, there's this misconception that, well, you're in cannabis and everyone's going to be, you know, everyone's printing money. And the truth is, there are operators that are doing quite well, and there are also operators that are struggling and just in the process of opening their businesses at a time when a pandemic hits.
How's the IRS handle you?
Well, we're very diligent about how we maintain our books. We invested in a very sophisticated ERP platform that has all of our financials integrated into it. And we manage our books very much like a publicly traded company. And we go through all of the necessary steps to audit our files and do all that annually to make sure that there's no risk. But, and I encourage everybody in the space to do the same. If you don't, it doesn't mean you can't operate your business with a more lightweight type of accounting package. You can. But I think it's inevitable that the IRS is going to look at every cannabis company, and it's just a matter of time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're keeping everything legit,
Yeah.
I mean, we all know a story about Al Capone. They got him because he couldn't show how he made all the money.
Mm-hmm.
And the IRS finally got it. That's what they put him in jail for. But you're not doing tax evasion. You're showing that. The feds don't consider it legally done.
Well, so because we're federally illegal, they enacted a provision of the tax code called 280E. And basically what that rule is, because of the likes of the Capones, is that if you're running a federally illegal business, you are not eligible to take the normal sales deductions. So basically, as a cannabis company, we are taxed at the highest
I was going to
rates
say, yeah.
from your revenue minus your cost of goods sold. That's what we're not eligible to take all your standard tax deductions, your SG&A.
Right.
We can't do that. So our tax contributions are extremely significant. So when people looked at cannabis, like those that were maybe new investors and they were getting in the space and they were very concerned about whether or not the industry was sustainable, the 280E tax provision was one of the things that the early investors actually got comfort in, because they realized that we weren't skirting the system. We were creating so much revenue for the federal government at a time when they needed it most, but nobody talked about the money that was coming from the cannabis
nobody
industry.
mentioned how happy they were
Nobody,
getting that
right.
money, but yet we got to keep them illegal.
Right. And that's why, in my opinion, the federal government has taken, of course, there's time it takes to enact policy. We respect that. But I think that there's also a curve to which, and this is just my little opinion on it, but I think there's a curve to which we get the states to adopt and we legalize this industry, and it allows the federal government to continue receiving the tax base that they've received. And that's why I feel like this thing's coming sooner than later. And removing the 280E tax provision will also help a lot more cannabis companies to be profitable. So it is a pretty
And it'll
pretty
also
big
bring
challenge.
down the price, the retail price. 'Cause
Absolutely.
if you don't have to raise that much money to pay your taxes, you're going to be able to lower the price.
Well, so now you're talking more about the state tax, right? Because on the state tax level, consumers are paying roughly 20%.
Right.
And out of that, I believe it's 16% that's going to the state, 3% that's going back to the municipality, and 1% that's going to a fund that's regulated by the CCC. So as Northbridge, for example, that 3% that you might, if you roll out adult use, Northbridge is going to see the 3% coming back from the tax base. But there's a lot more that needs to be done there. And for example, we're in the city of Northampton. And I'm very encouraged by what I saw in the city of Northampton from an industry perspective. They have a host community fee. So there's an impact fee that all of those in the state of Massachusetts are required to pay to most municipalities, which is 3%. So 3% of your top line sales revenue is going back to the city because you're there to minimize the impact of you operating there. Well, if there's no impact, then that money is not because there's an impact to the community. It's revenue that the town is extracting from the business being there.
Right.
So Northampton came out and said, we don't have an impact in our community, so we are now not accepting it. You can you can have it back. And they literally reached out to us and said, we're changing your host community agreement. You don't have to pay us.
Oh, well, because most cities and towns are saying, that's one of the reasons that they take it on. They say, oh, look, this is more money coming into our coffers.
Yep.
And they welcome it for that reason.
Part of the process of going through Prohibition 2.0, part of the process in us legalizing this industry, while many will look at that and say, well, that's not right. Look, it's part of the process. We saw the impact that it had on major markets in Brookline, in Leicester, in Northampton. In the early days when this opened, there were police details, and like to your point, we saw how complicated it was. So at that time, it made a lot of sense. But today, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the change. We're seeing cannabis companies being good neighbors, building great properties, bringing the public to restaurants.
I still don't see them giving up on cities. Recently, a few years ago, the state allowed the cities and towns to enact a meals tax. It's like 2% or 3%. Most of them did it right away, and they're not giving it up. They say, hey, I like getting that extra revenue in.
Oh, well, that is the problem with taxes, right? Well, if you can get it out there, it's really hard to repeal it.
Whenever they can get money, they're going to do it.
Yeah. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Again, you can spend a lot of time, and I think that there will be plenty of time on a federal and a state level for policy change, but we all have to be patient.
Well, it could change if it got competitive. You wanted to get an industry to come in, you waive a tax to get them there. Because, they're paying taxes, they're paying property tax, they're paying other taxes on equipment, things like that. So you're still going to get revenues from them.
Yes.
So you might say, well, we'll waive that 3% because we want to get them here. We don't want to go to the next town.
Right.
But this is crazy, though. I mean, when Prohibition came in, every state adhered to it. It was a national, but it started out with individual states. Prohibition, a lot of people don't realize, individual states had gone to Prohibition, but not their neighbors. And that's why they had to go national to really keep it, to get it under control. Mm-hmm. And it proved out to be the wrong idea anyway, and it got repealed. So I think they're going to see that with the marijuana. It doesn't work when some states have it and others don't. If you ever watch, I watched this show on the Nature Channel called Northwood's Law. Have you ever saw that?
No.
They do is they go around. They have a camera crew going around with the game wardens in New Hampshire and
Maine.
Maine.
I've seen it in Alaska. Sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they'll pick someone up and they got marijuana, and they say, well, it's not legal in New Hampshire. It is in Massachusetts, but it's not legal here. So you can have a possession a certain amount. In Texas, they also have Texas law.
Mm-hmm.
There, it's not legal at all in any amount. And they say, look, it may be legal in this state, but it isn't here. And this is getting to be a problem for some of the states.
Harry, it's so interesting to have this discussion because, again, it lends itself to how impatient we are as a society, right? What we're dealing with is something historical.
Yes.
And we're accepting it at a pace that's never fast enough for any of us. But there are benefits to this process. There are benefits in that this is a newly created industry. There's benefits to the fact that investors have the ability to invest in something and they can see a return. Patients, consumers are getting benefits. Yes, we have a long way to go. Long way to go. We're definitely not there. You know, for somebody like myself, I don't take enough time to enjoy the ride because it's too busy to do it. But these are things about the industry that one day is probably going to be in a textbook.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Hmm.
I mean, here again, I think Massachusetts did an outstanding job with their process. They say there's a lot of problems out in Colorado. I think maybe Colorado went too quick.
I personally think Governor Baker and his administration has done a great job with the CCC. It's not perfect, but I think that they've done a good job. I get nervous with the idea that they see the industry as an opportunity to continue open licenses. I mean, there's a certain finite amount of people that are here in the state, and I think that the industry is proving that it can survive and it's doing well. You know, we've regulated liquor licenses and things of that nature. I think
Right.
cannabis should fall in a very, you know, similar path. But I like the things that Massachusetts did. You know, we ran into that vaping ban, you know, the vape crisis.
Right.
And a lot of people came out to me and said, you know, aren't you furious about this? What do you think about this? This is unbelievable. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I respect it. And they said, well, how you're losing all this money? I said, it's not about the money. I didn't build a business like this to help patients that could potentially die from something that might be in this process. Now, the beauty of it is we as an organization, vitamin E acetate and other synthetics were found to be the cause of popcorn lung and some of the lung-related illnesses that were coming out. We were never going to subscribe to adding any additives to our vape products. We were only using cannabis-derived terpenes as a way of creating products. So again, purely is close to, you know, as natural as you can possibly be. Some operators didn't. Nationally, we saw operators in other states that were using that material. And this is why I say, legal or illegal, you do business with those that have the responsibility
Right.
to do the right thing, right? So Baker came out, put the ban on it, pulled all this in. It created a storm here in the state of Massachusetts. Operators lost millions of dollars with products that didn't make it out to quarantine. There were all sorts of problems with it. But it was a very responsible thing to do, and it led to change. And it was meaningful. So to me, you know, I have to be patient with those decisions, as financially difficult as it could be.
Do you think it'll be allowed again, or realizing that you can do vaping?
Oh, they allowed it. We're back. I mean, but there's more changes coming now. The federal government.
You have to they regulate what goes into it.
There are certain additives that you cannot use.
Right, which is not a problem.
No, and there's more research to be had. I mean, there's
Yep.
more information coming out, you know, about the use of certain devices and things of that nature that we may or may not be able to use. It's difficult to gain access of some of the devices now that you would use to fill. Excuse me. We're seeing complications there, but that's newly emerging every day. So as an industry, we're going to continue to see disciplines that are going to be refined and improved. And that to me is motivating.
You know, and I think the people who purchase have been responsible too. I haven't heard a lot about people getting stopped for using marijuana while they're driving.
No.
We had an incident a few years back where a state trooper was killed, where the guy was smoking while he was driving. But I mean, that's one guy out of how many?
Yeah. We've seen studies where we've seen up to 30% reduction in automobile and you know, OUI related accidents in states that adopted cannabis use.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good things. Now, you know, we need to pay attention. We can't take our foot off the gas. As an industry, as a society, we got to continue to monitor this. We got to continue to improve it. And for me personally, I'm just excited to be on the front line to do that. You know, you can never. There's always more to do.
Oh, absolutely. But I think, you know, it made it easier for police by they don't have to, you know, the minute they stopped the car in the past, they searched them and they, oh my God, they found a roach, you know. I think they're a waste of their time.
It is. It definitely is. I mean, so all of these improvements I think have been good. And it's reassuring to know that there are people that have been incarcerated for this that are going to soon find their way out, if they haven't already, in a number of different states. That's something that we need to correct.
And, you know, they said, well, people can grow their own. Why would they go to a retail store like yours and buy it? It's not that simple.
I never discourage somebody from growing on their own. What I will say is that, yes, we are going to adhere to the most rigorous standard of cultivation.
Right.
And we will do that forever. We will produce the highest quality. We will use all of the right materials.
And if you grow your own in your basement, it's not that cheap to do, number one.
No, and people have been doing this for years, but there are things like, mold is a spore it's airborne. It's all over New England, right? Powdery mildew, these things. People that you're growing in basements, you're not necessarily growing that plant in its most ideal condition.
Right.
We're growing in a location that is completely environmentally controlled. We control humidity and temperature to a single degree, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
You control the air that's in
Everything.
that room.
It is perfectly run.
Yeah.
So when we produce plants, we're growing them in their ideal condition. We don't need to provide additives and accelerate things of that nature that are probably wouldn't be legal in the regulated market, even in the FDA's eyes. It wouldn't be legal, but you can do that on your own. So that, again, at least I can speak on behalf of Resonate. We're putting the purest products out there.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you would go.
The air in that room is cleaner than the air that we breathe every day.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It really is. It's like I said, we built a spaceship, so we're going to Mars.
I know, because like I said, being on the planning board, I oversaw it. We were told what you had to do. I mean, it was unbelievable, the air exchange and the whole bit, and you have to regulate. Of course, you can have odors, so you have to regulate that.
Yeah, your first year of operation is pretty complicated. You work out a lot of these bugs. Again, we want to be good neighbors.
Right.
The pandemic has slowed everybody down to a crawl in terms of construction or anything else. Costs have skyrocketed. So things aren't any easier today. But I think for those in the Commonwealth looking at this industry, the judgment has to be that this has been to the benefit.
Yes. And like I said, I don't hear of any problems.
No.
I think it's worked out real well.
I would agree. I agree.
Peter, we used up our hour.
Yeah, we move pretty quickly through these
Yeah.
conversations,
But
don't
I'm
we?
glad you came in. We'll have you back and keep an update on this, and we're going off for the summer in a couple of weeks, but we'd look to have you back maybe in the fall and get an update on what's going on.
Yeah, I'd love to. Listen, I'm always happy to be here. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Okay. We'll be back next week, but until then, have a good week.